Good morning, Kahal Kadosh. Shavua Tov, or rather, Shabbat Shalom. Umevorach to everyone. Today, Friday, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Perashiot, Vayakhel Pekudeh, Makam Nahwan, Shabbat Perashat HaChodesh, Shabbat Mevarchim Chodesh Nisan. 28th day of Adar, corresponding to the 12th of March 2021. We'll explain the title of this week's Shabbat in a few moments. Today's class has been graciously sponsored by the Eliyahu family, Le'ilui Nishmat, their beloved father, Sami Ben Miriam, as well as by our dear friend and member, Mr. Isaac Savdeye, Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved mother, Yvette Bat Clotilde Be Isaac Sasson. Iratzon, that to the words of Torah, the Neshama have an aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. So this Shabbat, it's called Shabbat Perashat HaChodesh. Perashat HaChodesh, as we know, refers to the fourth and final special Torah reading that will add besides the Shabbat reading in honor to welcome the upcoming day of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which Be'ezat Hashem will be announced at the synagogue, but Rosh Chodesh will be Mosai Shabbat, Sunday, one day of Rosh Chodesh. We have Perashiot Vayakhel Pekudeh. Both Perashiot deal with the concept of the building of the Mishkan, the loss of Shabbat, the reckoning of the income and expenses for the building of the Mishkan, and also Perashat Pekudeh marks the conclusion of Sefer Shemot. And in honor of all of the above, this is the makam, according to the expert, that we do during Shabbat. Now, I'd like to concentrate today in the Zohar and in the Musar of today. I gave this class earlier today in the early Minyan, and I find it very appropriate and fascinating to help us to prepare for Shabbat and to become conscientious about every action that we do throughout the day, as well as every word that we say and every breath that we exhale and inhale. So the Zohar begins with an interesting pasuk. In the beginning of Perashat Vayakhel, the first Perashat, just to give perhaps an historical background of this particular Perashat. So we had the scene of the Egel. That happened, the scene of the golden calf, that happened on the 17th of Tammuz. 40 days later, Rosh Chodesh Elul, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to beseech the Almighty for forgiveness. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down 40 days later, which will be known in history as the day of Yom Kippur. On that day, Moshe Rabbeinu gives the second tablets, the second luchot. And that is the reason why in the Sephardic tradition, when it comes to the month of Elul, we say Selichot for 40 days. Why? Because we are riding on the credit of Moshe Rabbeinu. Like Moshe Rabbeinu was able to negotiate a truce or a peace treaty with Hashem for the benefit and the protection and the survival of the Jewish nation, also during the month of Elul and the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, we still are having this credit and this zechut of Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom. The day after, now the 11th of Tishrei, the pasuk says, Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu gathers the entire Jewish nation. There is a concept in Judaism called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. If we look quickly at Perashat Kitisa, the Perashat that we read and discusses the scene of the Egel, will come across technical situation, but I'll continue talking. Will come across I apologize for that. I just realized. We'll come across the concept of Vaikahalu al Aharon. The people gather against Aharon a Kohen. So what happens now? The Jewish people acted in a way that they ganged up, so to speak, against Aharon. So Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom comes a bit later, and it says, Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu gathered. What does it mean? Like the last gathering was for something wrong, something inappropriate, now we need to gather for the sake of godliness. This is the foundation of the first pasuk that the Zohar Kadosh discusses today. Let's see what happened in that gathering. Let me just open the pasuk quickly. So Moshe Rabbeinu now gathers all of the entire Jewish nation. Beautiful, the day after. And it says, Vayomer alehem, Ele hadevarim asher tziva Hashem la'asot otam. These are the commandments. Sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha. 6 days you shall work, and on the 7th day will be a day Shabbat, Shabbaton la'Hashem, a day of rest to the Almighty. Kol ha'osevo melacha yomad. Basically, on Shabbat, there is the concept of melachot, the forbidden labors that cannot be done on Shabbat. Lo teba'aru esh bechol moshevotechem beyom haShabbat. Do not light fire in any of your dwelling places on the day of Shabbat. So, before we actually read the Zohar, I think that it's important to understand the messages that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us in these few pesukim that I read. So we discuss the pasuk number 1, the gathering to become closer to the Almighty. And then the first mitzvah that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving the Jewish people is the mitzvah of observing the Shabbat, working during the week, but resting on the day of Shabbat. And the reason is because the sin of the Egel, it's called Avodah Zara, idolatry. Shabbat is emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I believe that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day God rested. So I function in the same manner with my human limitations that I have as humans. But the Gemara also says, Kol HaShomer Shabbat, Afilu Abad Avodah Zara Kedor Enosh Mohalim Lo. A person that starts observing the Shabbat, even though in the younger years or in the past aspects of his life or her life was someone involved with idolatry, nevertheless, the merit of the Shabbat forgives the person. Why? Because Shabbat is the antidote of Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah means cutting the connection with God, and Shabbat is reconnecting with God. Beautiful. So the next pasuk says, and one mehila, before I move to the next pasuk, it's important to understand what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, that yes, we have the mitzvah of building the Mishkan, but that doesn't mean that we desecrate the Shabbat for the building of the Mishkan. The Mishkan was the sanctuary, the tabernacle, to be more precise, was a tabernacle that was mobile. It was like a puzzle, so to speak. So we know that the building of the Mishkan and the donations of the Mishkan were in part tikkun for the sin of the golden calf. Tikkun means a spiritual repair. So what is Moshe Rabbeinu figuring? That, hold on a minute, the Jewish people are so eager to atone for the sin that they made with the Egel, that now they're going to want to build the Mishkan without any interruption. Even in the world of construction, let's say in the condominiums, here at least, in the buildings, if contractors want to come and do work, they have limited hours, let's say 8 to 4. Not to disturb the peace, not to make a lot of noise and people, kids, etc. Beautiful. Now, so Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, because Am Yisrael is eager to do the tikkun for the Egel, maybe they're going to start working on Shabbat to build the tabernacle, to build the Mishkan. For this reason, the Pasuk says, Ubayom HaShevi'i Shabbat Shabbaton LaHashem. The Shabbat becomes a sabbatical. Next Pasuk, Lo teba'aru esh bechol moshevotechem beyom HaShabbat. Do not ignite fire in any of your dwelling places on the day of Shabbat. The language is very strange. First of all, from all of the prohibitions of Shabbat, why fire is the one singled out? So there are different answers. And one answer says that perhaps the person understanding that the day of Shabbat is the day in which I'm able to have a direct link and connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu much stronger than what happens during the week. Since on Shabbat we don't do a lot of the things that we do during the week, so our concentration is stronger, our thoughtfulness is there, etc. So therefore, Shabbat is also a very holy guest, so to speak. So the person say, hold on a minute, if I have such an honorary guest like the day of Shabbat, how can I eat Shabbat day food that was cooked the day before? Let me cook fresh food in honor of Shabbat. For this reason, the Torah says, among many, Lo teba'aru esh, don't ignite fire. And now when it comes to rabbinical power, which means that the great rabbis of the Talmud concluded, and that is halakha, that the prohibition of fire on Shabbat, it's only to start a new fire. But if you have a fire from before, you're allowed to use it on Shabbat, obviously without touching it, and to put a blech or a plata. Why do we put a blech or a plata? So conscientiously we know that this is a day of Shabbat. It's not a regular weekday that I'm able to do what I need to do, etc. But this is learned from Torah shebe'al peh, from the oral law. There was a sect many years ago, I'm not sure if they exist today, but they used to call them the Karaites. And one of the reasons why they call this name is because they will not believe in the oral law. They will read the Torah and they will translate the Torah based on the raw text. And for them, they will not have fire burning on Shabbat in their home. They used to eat only cold food because they didn't believe in a hot plate, they didn't believe in a blech, etc. They believe, do not ignite fire on Shabbat in any of your dwelling places. Which this brings the next question. Why the Torah says, in all your dwelling places? I ask you a question. When it comes to the mitzvah of mezuzah, does it say in all your dwelling places? When it comes to the mitzvah of tefillin, when it comes to the mitzvah of going to the mikveh, or lighting the candles for Shabbat, or the laws of kashrut, the Torah makes a distinction depending where the person lives. So why then, when it comes to this particular concept of the fire, the Torah uses the lashon, the language of all your dwellings? We're going to answer that in a moment from the Zohar. But because we reached the Zohar, we'll add one more meaning of this particular sentence in the parasha, in the first of the two parashiot. This week's parashiot are a bit long, but nevertheless, beautiful Perashiot that talks about the final concept of the Mishkan. So the Torah is also sending us a message, and it says, Lo teba'aru esh, do not ignite the fire. What fire is the Torah referring to? According to the Zohar, it refers to the fire of heavenly judgment in Shamayim. According to the books of Musar, they compare anger and argument with fire. So perhaps we can activate a new pirush on this pasuk that says, do not ignite the fire or argument in any of your dwelling places on the day of Shabbat. And why specifically on the day of Shabbat? Because the Zohar HaKadosh writes elsewhere that the beracha of the week comes for the Shabbat. So look at your Shabbat. You don't have to share this with anyone. Look at your personal Shabbat and see how the Shabbat goes. And how the Shabbat goes, it gives the person perhaps an idea, Be'ezat Hashem, how the entire week will go. Why? The language of the Zohar says, I believe, the mineh mitbarechin kal kol yemei shiv'ah, that from the blessing and the sanctity and the holiness of the Shabbat, the entire week gets the blessing. What does it mean? So Shabbat, from a spiritual perspective, is not the end of the week, is the beginning of the week for spiritual aspects, for my financial matters and physical matters, Mosai Shabbat, Saturday night. But as far as concerned, based on what we are learning now, at this moment, now is at 9:45 Miami time, almost, okay? Now we are at the end of the week. And Be'ezat Hashem, in a couple of hours from now, when we come to the synagogue for prayers, Be'ezat Hashem, God willing, now we are closing the week and we are welcoming the new week. And that is the reason why there is a concept in Jewish law known as Tosefet Shabbat. Tosefet Shabbat literally means to add a few moments before Shabbat starts and a few moments after Shabbat ends. So the person doesn't show like the person is escaping from the Shabbat, but completely the opposite. So with that being said, let me take a quick look. Let me open the right page. It was in Perashah Vayakhel. I'm going to jump now to Perashah Pekudeh. The Zohar says, Ta Amar Rabbi Shimon, Lo teba'aru. The Zohar uses the pasuk that we discussed at this moment, and it says, one of the spiritual reasons why we don't turn on the fire on Shabbat is because we don't want to ignite the fire of judgment on Shabbat in the heavenly judicial system. I'd like to remind the Kahal Kadosh something that we learned a while back. I believe going back to after Sukkot, right in the beginning of Perashah Bereshit, I believe, the Zohar tells us that there are three things that a person must avoid constantly. Number one, never curse yourself or others. If cursing ourselves, meaning to say that a person themselves curses themselves, it's wrong. For sure, cursing someone else is even a bigger avon. That's one. Number two, the Zohar says, when it comes to dispose of bread, make sure that the breads are small and they have less than an ounce to stay away from poverty. And the third thing the Zohar says, do not ignite the fire of Havdalah prematurely. Meaning to say, don't run away from the Shabbat. Wait till the proper halachic time concludes the Shabbat. Why? Because if you light the Havdalah candle before actually Shabbat is over, now that person became famous, but for an infamous reason. What kind of famous aspect the person gets? The Zohar says that they put up a sign in Shamayim. I use an example so everybody can relate. You know, when I open the class, I usually say, class has been sponsored by XYZ. Today we have the Mr. Savdeye and the Eliyahu family, and Baruch Hashem, people are sponsoring, and feel free to do so. 180 a day, 720 a week, or 6 classes in which the sponsor picks up the date and broadcasted live via itorah.com, plus send via WhatsApp, plus send via email through our email list. So Ben Porat Yosef, many people receive the classes broadcasted live via itorah.com, and they do the uploading and the videoing and the audio. Baruch Hashem. I'm not selling anything, but if you're interested, I'll use it as a reminder. Excuse me. So imagine yourself, you sponsor something, you feel good. You dedicated a class in memory of a relative. You dedicated a class in honor of your family, for example. But can you imagine a sign that says fire of Gehinnom, sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. or Mrs. or Miss? No one wants to be in that sponsorship. Imagine yourself, they put up a letter in the synagogue that says, the following person gave the kahal a headache this week. Haz v'shalom. You're going to start saying lashon hara, rechilut, all kinds of things. Suddenly we remember all these halachot. The Zohar Kadosh says that in our merit of us in the planet Earth, not running away from the Shabbat and not touching the fire of the Shabbat, which we must say, halachically, fire, electricity, cell phones are all under the same umbrella, all derivatives of fire, therefore all not allowed to be turned on or to be turned off or to be touched, etc. The Ben Ish Hai, which I have behind me, I see it next to the green book. I'll bring it. So I'll read you exactly the magnificent language that the Ben Ish Hai uses, which I love so much because it delivers us a powerful message of really understand that our life, how physical our life is, but it's not limited to physicality, but definitely spirituality carries a huge amount on the person, of influence on the person. So the Ben Ish Hai talks about Perashat Ki Tetzeh in the laws of honesty in business. Before the halacha, he always brings a spiritual, Kabbalistic introduction to the connection of the mitzvah that we'll be discussing in this particular chapter. So it says as follows, that many times when people are not honest in business, if it's by measurements, by weight, by volume, and the person cheats in business, ha'adam hoshev, the person thinks, she'oseh ma'asehu lemata begashmiyut bilbad, that the crime, so to speak, the sin, was only here, nobody knows, and only is connected to the physical world. So the Zohar, the Ben Ish Hai says, lo, shebe'emet hu nogea gam lema'ala. It also has an influence on the heavenly matters, shepogem beotiyot Hashem Baruch Hu, because it's damaging the holy letters of Hashem's name. What does it mean, damaging the holy letters of God's names? So here the Ben Ish Hai brings a proof from David HaMelech, book of Tehillim, chapter 121. Shila Ma'alot Esa Einai Leharim, the famous chapter. And he says, Hashem Silecha Al Yad Yeminecha. God is your shadow on your right hand. What does that mean? Kelomar, Kelimyon Hasel Ken Hu. The image of the shadow. What does that mean? I have my hand. I open my fingers. The reflection will open the fingers. I close my hand. The reflection shows that I close my hand. So the Ben Ish Chai says, like the shadow mimics whatever is done, Dema she'oseh Adam lemata, whatever the person does here on the planet Earth, na'aseh davar kenegdo lema'ala, there is a mirror image equally happen, hem betov, hen lehefech, if it's good or if it's completely the opposite. Very powerful statement from the great Ben Ish Chai in this matter. And the reason I read this is because somebody may say, Rabbi, come on, because I'm igniting the fire, suddenly I'm activating the fire of Gehinnom? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. And this supplements what I mentioned before, the fire of anger, the fire of argument. And the Zohar Kadosh discusses even further the connection of the Shabbat with the entire week. What does that mean? Every day, towards the end of the prayer, we say something called Shir Shel Yom, the song of the day. Today, we said, Hashem Malach, Hayom Yom Hashishi B'Shabbat Kodesh. Today is the Friday of the week. But guess what? Sunday comes, not this Sunday according to the Syrian tradition, because we do not say Shir Shel Yom when it's Rosh Chodesh. But other Sephardic institutions do say Shir Shel Yom. And Sunday morning, what they will say, Hayom Yom Echad B'Shabbat Kodesh. Today is the first day of the week. I ask you, why is there a need to mention Shabbat Kodesh? You're still digesting the Melaveh Malkah that you had the night before, or the Hamin or the Cholent that you had the night before. And Sunday morning you're already saying, oh, Shabbat is coming in 6 days, let me get ready. Monday morning comes, the same story. It says the Zohar Kadosh that the Shabbat is the essence of the week. And the rest of the days follow the essence of the Shabbat. Not only that, every time that we say this sentence, Hayom Yom Echad B'Shabbat Kodesh, according to many opinions, we are fulfilling a positive commandment of the Torah. What positive commandment? Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Remember the day of Shabbat to sanctify it. Zochrehu bapeh. Remember the day of Shabbat verbally, which is fulfilled through the daily song that we say towards the end of Shacharit. Not only that, according to the Halakha, a person is allowed under extreme circumstances to recite Havdalah up to Tuesday night. And the reason is because the aura of the Shabbat, the holiness of the Shabbat, lasts throughout Tuesday evening, 3 consecutive days. Where do we see another reference in Jewish law concerning the aura of the Shabbat? The short answer is the loss of Melaveh Malkah. Melaveh Malkah, it's also an additional name given to the 4th meal usually eaten on Mosa'e Shabbat. Another name to this Sa'udah, it's called Sa'udah de David HaMelech, or the David Malkah Meshicha, a special meal that David HaMelech used to do every Mosa'e Shabbat after he was informed that he will depart the world on the Shabbat. So he will wait till Shabbat will be over, and then he will make Havdalah, and he will make like a Sa'udat Hoda'ah, a meal of gratitude to Hashem that granted him another complete week of life, something that only happened to David HaMelech to know exactly which day of the week he may meet the Creator. But interesting enough, in the loss of Melaveh Malkah, it's something interesting written about it. And it's the concept of how should a person be dressed when they eat melave malka. We already know, and we discussed it in the past, the concept of honoring the Shabbat with food, honoring the Shabbat by taking a shower, bathing before Shabbat, honoring the Shabbat, obviously coming to shul, the whole thing, but specifically I'm concentrating on one aspect of the honoring the Shabbat, the concept of how a person dresses in honor of Shabbat. And we know that the changing garments in honor of Shabbat cannot wait till Shabbat morning. They need to happen on Friday afternoon. Why? The laws of Melave Malka says, try to eat Melave Malka with the garments that you wore during the Shabbat. Obviously, if a person is going to take a shower and change, we're not telling him, no, put back everything from Shabbat. No. But if a person, let's say, is not going home, or is not going to take a shower, stay with the garments of Shabbat. Why? Short answer. Because the garments of Shabbat absorb, that's a word, absorb the holiness of the Shabbat. And the garments of the weekday are limited to the weekday. You see me almost every day, I believe. You see, I change my tie every day. I change my suit every few days. Shirts, obviously. Now, let me ask you a question. If you will not know who I am and that I'm giving classes, and you see me on the street walking around, what are you going to say? Oh, this fellow is ready for Shabbat. So technically, I have, and I apologize if I'm bragging, but let's say I have the cleanliness and the elegance of, I can say, I am dressed elegantly in honor of Shabbat. But you and I know that if you will come to shul tonight, you'll see me with a different suit, and different tie, and different shoes, and a hat, and a Shabbat taled. Why? Because the garments earmark Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh, they absorb from the sanctity and the holiness of the Shabbat. And therefore, change on Friday afternoon. Don't wait till Shabbat morning, because it changes. Even though you say, what's the big deal, Rabbi? The Ben Ish Chai just said, it's like you're refreshing yourself with the holiness and the honoring of the Shabbat. And therefore, the Zohar Kadosh concludes and it says, the day of the Shabbat, we can add one more if you allow me, Abishu, please, one more concept before we go to the Musar of today, which is powerful, beautiful. Stick around for a few more minutes. I'll go probably into overtime, 5 extra minutes with your permission. That's after I finish the official allotted time. The Zohar says the day of the Shabbat is a gift to Am Israel. Beni uben bnei Israel ot hi le'olam. Between me and the Jewish people is an eternal covenant. The Shabbat, as we said in the past, is the umbilical cord that connects us with the Kedusha of the Shabbat and with godliness. And that's why a Goy, a Gentile, is not allowed to observe Shabbat at all, because it's penetrating into a domain that has no tools to receive the sanctity, because he or she doesn't have the neshama that absorbs the essence of the Shabbat. To this statement that I'm saying, although for the Syrian tradition and Syrian world, there is no the concept of conversion, but let's say for the outside Syrian traditions, the outside world, Ashkenazic or Sephardic, there are people who convert. Obviously, it needs to be done properly for the sake of heaven and not for the sake of marriage or for the sake of money, but for the sake of heaven. And now, part of the training of a convert is to spend Shabbat with a Jewish family that has been approved by the Beit Din and will teach the person how to conduct themselves. Therefore, that will cause the person to spend Shabbat in this Jewish people's home in order to see Shabbat in action. Now, what we tell the potential convert, go to the light switch in the middle of the Shabbat, or tell him in advance, or he's being taught by someone, make a phone call in the middle of the Shabbat. Why do they say this to the Gentile convert, potential convert? Very simple. Because by him or her using the cell phone, touching money, or making a phone call, or touching the light, it's considered a violation of Shabbat. So therefore, by they violating the Shabbat when they are Gentile, so the concept of Shabbat being a gift for the Jewish people no longer applies. And the Zohar Kadosh concludes with a fascinating pasuk that says, "Ve'atem adevekim b'Hashem Elokechem, hayim kullechem hayom." Those that glue themselves with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Zohar Kadosh says, what kind of glue are you using? Gorilla glue, crazy glue, super glue, blue tape glue? Which one do you use? Duct tape. It says, Kedushat Shabbat Kodesh. You want to glue yourself to God, meaning to say you want to be attached to godliness. Shabbat is one of the most fundamental aspects of life. I'm going to switch the topic for a few moments. Remember what I said a few moments ago, quoting the Ben Ish Hai, that every action causes a mirror reaction or a mirror image in the heavenly courts? The Musar from Sha'arei Kedusha also talks about a very interesting concept, and is about the concept of the words that come out of the person's mouth. So it says, "Afilu devarim she'en bahem mamash," even simple conversation that there is no transgressions or prohibitions connected to it. Hem nichtavim al perkaso shel ha'adam. They also get written by the action book that belongs to the person. In other words, like we record the classes, in Shamayim they record the speech and record the actions. And that's why it says, Bekorim lefanav b'sha'at mitato. And also, they read this when the person is about to meet the Creator. All the actions and words. Be'amru rabotenu zal. Our holy rabbis of blessed memory said, Shetikato shel adam. The more this person is silenced, yafa midiburo. It's better than the power of speech. Meviyato lide midat ha'anava. And that brings the person to become humble, to have humility. Be'anava hirosh lekol irat shamayim. And humility is the beginning of developing irat shamayim, fear of heaven. But it goes a bit further. Be'sha'a sheno osek b'torah. And when a person is not occupying themselves in Torah learning, hiye domem, be silent, umadbik siftotav zolazo, and glue your lips. Yani, in Spanish there is a statement that says, in a mouth that is closed, the fly don't come in. I think you understand the message. And then it says, and this is an eye-opener. Please pay attention to the next statement. מפני שכל צדקותיו וזכיותיו כולן של האדם אינן מספיקות ממה שיוסיף בשפתיו. The Midrash Rabbah says that all the reward and compensation and blessings that a person may be entitled to receive for the righteousness and the merits and the mitzvah are not enough to protect the person from the sins emitted or the sins committed or made or performed by the lips of the person. Yani a person may be giving every day $100 to tzedakah. Beautiful. You're going to give more, faddal. Perfect. No issues at all. But a person gives and gives and gives. But guess what? Then he goes home, he criticizes the wife. Then he goes to the office and picks or mistreats the employees. Or then goes to the synagogue and talks during Kaddish or Hazara. I'm only bringing examples related to the power of speech. And I repeat, the power of speech could be criticism, could be talking about another person, saying things which are forbidden, or talking when a person is not supposed to talk. So imagine yourself, the Zohar is telling us is like a person who is making direct deposits every day. Beautiful. But guess what? Then the person at the end of the month says, hold on a minute, how come my account is in overdraft? How come my account is empty? Where did all the money that I deposited went or go? Says, Rohi, you made a deposit, but you make withdrawals. Yes, you did that mitzvah and that tzedakah and that chesed, but in the next minute or the next hour, you acted in a way which is not suitable for a Jew to conduct themselves in. What a powerful message. And therefore it says, Ashrei mi sheyasim, fortunate is the person who makes himself mute. Yani, don't talk. Heresh. Heresh means deaf. Because if you're deaf, Haz v'shalom, then you learn how to ignore what other people are saying. And if you ignore, you remain calm and you don't argue. Uhiger, or lame, uchsuma, and blind. Bekol kach lama. And why all of the above? Kedei shelo yeheta. So none of these body parts will be involved in the transgression of the person. And that's why King David in chapter 38 says, Va'ani keheresh lo ishma. And I'm like a deaf person that will not hear. Uchilem lo ihtah piv. And like a mute will open up my mouth. Meaning to say, even my enemies, David HaMelech says, I ignore them. I ignore them. I don't go into argument with them. I'm happy, I'm calm, I'm content. And the Zohar HaKadosh writes and it says, Belet bahevel delet becha kala. There is no breath that does not have a voice. What does that mean? So perhaps we can explain the following. There are two ways of talking. Talking without the S. One is the way we are talking. But then there is a different type of talking, and this is the talking of silence. What does it mean? Imagine yourself that we have a few people here with us today, conversing, talking, and then one of us, in the middle of the conversation, does the following. Now, how do you read that? You know what the Zohar says? That in Shamayim, this breath that came from the person's mouth becomes words. And then they have two ways to go. To the account of compliments, to the account of benefits, or God forbid, to the account of judgment. In other words, maybe somebody said this, and it could mean to that, stay quiet, and to you, stop talking, and to you, you don't know what you're talking about. All of these are condescending types of talking to people. And that's a very powerful message that the Zohar HaKadosh delivers today. And at the end of the day, the Zohar says that the Pasuk writes concerning Esther HaMalka, Batilvash Esther Malchut. Esther, that's in chapter 5 of Megillat Esther. Esther was dressed in royal garments. Malchut is kingdom, but it means in royal garments. And the question is, what's the big deal? If Esther is the queen, what, she's going to be in pajamas all day? She's going to be wearing the royal garments. The Zohar says that actually this refers that because Esther had the power of self-control, and every time Ahasuerus will attempt to know her biography or whereabouts or background, etc., she remained quiet. And that's the name Esther. Esther means from Lashon Seter, hidden. Words are hidden. So it says that she was able to have the divine presence in her life. And we learned this about it a while back when we explained the topic of the Sefirot, godly illuminations of the world. And we discussed which part of the body corresponds to the Sefirah of Malchut, kingdom. And we explained the mouth of the person, meaning to say the person can be the king of their silence or be the slave of their words. But remember, let's say now I'm recording this class. Let's say that somebody now knocks on the door. Like it or not, the recorder will pick up this sound. Or let's say I start singing, Habibi, or you start singing, and you're in the room. The recorder will pick it up. The Zohar HaKadosh says, and the Musar of Sha'arei Kedusha, Shamayim picks up every breath, every word. So B'ezrat Hashem, with the combination of Perashah Vayakhel Pekudei and Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the happiest month of the Jewish calendar, the time of Pesach, the month that we say Yehishem, the beginning of the inauguration of the Mishkan, the B'ezrat Hashem, everybody will have a Shabbat Shalom and Mevorach, and who knows, maybe Mashiach comes, Mosai Shabbat, I don't think it's going to come now, it's Erev Shabbat according to our tradition, but Mosai Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, inauguration of the Mishkan, and it's the first day of Nisan that Mashiach has the potential to come. Inshallah, B'ezrat Hashem will have Besurot Tovot. So we say Shabbat Shalom to everybody. We say Chodesh Tov. Mosai Shabbat is the beginning of Rosh Chodesh, one day only. And once again, we express our gratitude to our esteemed member and friend Don Isaac Savdeye for graciously sponsoring today's class Le'ilui Nishmat, his beloved mother Yvette Bat Clotilde B'Yishak Sasson, and as well to the Eliyahu family from New York for graciously sponsoring today's class Le'ilui Nishmat, their beloved father Sami Ben Miriam Alav Shalom. Have a great day. Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov B'Siman Tov, and we'll see each other, God willing, in the Bet HaMikdash on Sunday, or if not, Haz v'Shalom, by Ay Torah 9:15, 9:20, in honor of Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.